Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I focus on everything luxury beauty and fashion. If you're interested in the latest fashion and beauty trends as well as luxury vlogs, then you are in the right place. Today we're going to talk about the Christmas limited edition collection from Dior, which has this beautiful gold and white packaging. I'm going to do a detailed comparison between this year's collection versus last year's limited edition holiday collection, as well as the swatches of the products that are released this year. I'm also going to talk about the price points of all the products that are part of this collection and help you understand how did the price change over the last year. At the end of this video, I'm also going to do a demo on my face to demonstrate the performance of the products and share my thoughts in terms of whether they're worth picking up or not. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you continue watching. For those of you that are new to this channel, hello and welcome. On this channel, we do a lot of holiday beauty release coverage. So I already did 2 videos this year covering the Dior gift set, which features a very glamorous sequin evening bag, as well as this year's couture eyeshadow palettes, which can be turned into a wallet. And I'm also going to talk about this year's Chanel holiday release, as well as the highly anticipated Chanel gift sets. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you like this video and join the fam so that you don't miss out. And without any further ado, let's dive into today's video. Starting with the packaging, again, as I mentioned in the other 2 holiday videos, that this year's holiday packaging take on a very similar color scheme compared to the last 2 years, which has this white and gold design. However, this year's design was inspired by the circus, so you see a lot of animal elements in the design, which is really cool. And if you go to one of those Dior beauty boutiques, you have the option of asking your sales associate to wrap up your presents in a paper wrapping. And I always do that whenever possible because Dior makes the most beautiful wrapping paper. This year's paper packaging is slightly different than previous years, where the background is white with some gold details on the packaging. To be honest with you, I think I actually preferred the couture gift box as well as the gift set boxes compared to this paper packaging. The pre-packaged boxes just feel so much more glamorous, so I feel like this year you can skip the paper packaging if you want. And I do want to talk about the Dior star as well because it is one of the key elements of this year's collection. If you watched my couture eyeshadow palette review, you know that that's what the eyeshadow embossing is designed after. And even the cover of the couture packaging features a lot of little stars embedded into the quilted design. So this year, as you can see, that this year's Dior star has a lot of little stars embedded in it too, which is really cool. And I will compare this one against last year's star so that you can have a good idea of what might be the difference. Last year, the Dior star was designed after the theme of the royal ball, so you see a lot of European Baroque type of elements in the Dior star design, whereas this year, as you can see, it is quite different. So I personally think I prefer this year's star because I feel like it's more modern looking, but I do love last year's star design as well. And one good thing about the Dior star is if you collect a lot of Dior products, you can actually decorate your Christmas tree with those Dior stars, and they just add such a special touch to your Christmas tree. Last year, I also did a DIY Dior wreath using Dior stars. So if you're interested in finding out how to make your own wreath, please make sure that you check out the video link down below. And I have to tell you, before last year's Dior workshop, I've never attempted making my own wreath before, but after trying it out, I realized how easy it is to do that, and I think I'm going to personalize my wreath every year now going forward. So please make sure that you check out the video if you're interested. And now let's talk about all the products that are included in this year's holiday limited edition collection. And I got a few subscribers asking me when I posted my other 2 holiday videos that every year Dior has such a massive launch during the holiday season. It's really difficult to catch up. So I do want to do a quick roundup so that you guys have a good idea of what we're going to review today and what are some of the other products that are coming out or have already been released by Dior. So first of all, every year Dior would usually launch a couture eyeshadow or face palette collection that features a very special luxurious design on the cover of the eyeshadow palettes. These eyeshadow palettes tend to retail at a higher price point just because how beautiful the packaging is, and the intended targets of the eyeshadow palette in my view tends to be people that are not so into makeup. And you can see that by the color stories of those eyeshadow palettes, which tends to be quite safe, very neutral, and because of the beautiful packaging, these are ideal presents for holiday gifts. Whereas this holiday limited edition collection, I feel, is more geared towards people that are very into makeup, and these tends to be, not really holiday gifts for other people, but more like holiday gifts to yourself, or collectors that are really into high-end beauty products that collect this every year. So that's the key difference, which is why when you look at the Dior Show limited edition collections, you will see that typically Dior will introduce some very unconventional or very bold color stories, because again, this collection is designed for people who are interested in playing with colors, different textures, and who already have a lot of makeup products in their collection and want to experiment something new. So with that in mind, that's what we're going to review today. Now let's talk about the price points of this year's limited edition holiday collection. So I have to say I was a little bit surprised that they increased the price on the eyeshadow palettes, given that the regular collection already saw a round of price increase, especially in Canada. So this Dior Show eyeshadow palette now retails for 100 Canadian dollars, whereas the regular collection retails for $88 before the price increase, and I think they retail for about $92 now. So this palette is about 10% more than the regular collection, and I will talk about whether the price increase is worth it. And when it comes to the Rouge Dior lipstick, and by the way, this lipstick is refillable, which means you can, once you finish this lipstick, you can purchase refills to put in this beautiful limited edition gold packaging. And this limited edition lipstick retails for 72 Canadian dollars compared to the regular collection that retails for 65 Canadian dollars. So again, 10% increase. And I'll make sure that I put the US dollar prices down below so that you guys can compare. In the US market, I think the price increase is about the same, about 10% compared to the regular collection. In terms of the Sequin lipstick, it is priced the same in Canada compared to the Rouge Dior lipstick at 72 Canadian dollars. And again, it's about 10% increase compared to last year's Sequin lipstick. There are a whole range of color choices from nude to red to plum, and the one that I picked up is 220 ribbon, which is a more nude pink color. There's one limited edition color that was launched into the liquid highlighter collection, which has a little bit of a purple and pink shift, and that one retails for 68 Canadian dollars. And there's also a powder highlighter that's very beautiful with very nice quilted design on the embossing. And then there are also 2 limited edition nail polishes. One of them is more of a glittery topper shade that's called the Gold Circus, and also has a little bit of a pink base, which is very beautiful. You can use this both as a nail polish topper or on its own. There's also a purple nail polish, which I did not pick up because I don't really like colored polish with glitters in it, because I do have to go to the office, and having glittery color polish is not really appropriate given my work environment. Now let's talk about the color story of this year's holiday collection. And every year Dior will always introduce a relatively safer color story, such as last year they introduced this pink palette to kind of tailor to the broad consumer base. And then they introduced a silver palette that's tailored towards people that are more adventurous and people that want to try different color combinations. Similarly, this year they introduced a more red and gold collection, and then they also introduced a plum collection, which is the one that I pick up. And I think this one is the more popular one. As soon as it was introduced on the Dior official website, this eyeshadow palette was already sold out in Canada. And I mean, this is not the first time that Dior introduced purple and silver in their holiday collections. In fact, last year in their Dior Backstage collection, they did a very similar color story. And I'm going to talk about in a bit how the two differ in terms of the swatches and the color combinations. Now let's talk about the swatches that I've done. First of all, I would say the colors included in this plum palette are quite logical, if that makes sense. So you basically have a very deep purple shade here as a crease shade, and then you can kind of use either of those two deep purple or lavender shade as a transition shade. And if you want to deepen your crease, you can use this deep purple shade as a eyeliner, and then this silver shade is the perfect inner corner highlighter. So I think as soon as I saw this palette, I already have an idea how to use it, compared to some of the other eyeshadow palettes. When you see it, you're like, okay, I don't know how am I supposed to work with it, such as the purple eyeshadow palette that was launched last year by Guerlain. I did a review on that one as well, but I would say that color story, which also included purple, was very unconventional and wasn't sure how to use it, and I had to really look at the palette, play with it, and try to come up with an idea of how to apply it on my lid. And comparing to the Dior Backstage eyeshadow palette that was launched last year, I wouldn't say there are a lot of dupes, but I would say there are some similarities between the two eyeshadow palette. For example, this deep purple shade in the middle, it's not the same as this blue shade over here, but they are quite similar in terms of the texture. But as you can see, even from the pen, that the Dior Backstage color is a lot more blue compared to this year's color. And I think this year's shade has a little bit more glitters in it, maybe because of the silver embossing that's on top of it. And if you compare this year's deep purple or burgundy shade versus last year's raspberry shade, there are some similarities too, but this year's shade is a lot deeper and cooler toned compared to last year's. And then in terms of the transition shade, I also compared this lighter purple shade versus last year's fuchsia shade. There are some similarities. Again, this year's color is more cool toned and more purple compared to last year's shade. And if you look at this year's lighter purple transition shade versus last year's pinkish purple highlighter shade, there are some similarities too. But I think last year's color is slightly more lavender compared to this year's. This year's color is slightly more plum. I also compare the silver shade between this year's palette versus last year's palette. Last year's silver color is more creamy, whereas this year's color is more glittery. I personally prefer last year's silver color because I feel like the consistency is more smooth, whereas this year's silver color is slightly patchy. But I do really enjoy the rest of the palette. I think they are very easy to wear. Now let's talk about the makeup look that I've done. If you guys follow me, you know that I prefer to start with deeper colors and then slightly go towards the inner corner to lighten up the whole look. So I started with this deep purple color as a crease shade to define the shape of my eyes and add some definition. And then I went in with this lighter purple color to transition into the other lavender, pinkish lavender color. And then I used this silver color in the inner corner to lighten up the whole look. And I feel like I could have left it like that, but I do want to show you guys this deep purple color in the middle. So I used this color over the crease to add even more dimension into my eyes. And I would say I enjoyed all of the 5 colors, and I do think it is a very beautiful palette. And then I went over my cheekbone with this liquid highlighter, the Forever Glow Maximizer in the color Pearly on my cheekbone, and I do like how it turned out. This is one of my favorite liquid highlighters, and the reason why I didn't pick up this year's special shade is because I think this pearly shade is quite similar to the limited edition collection, and the limited edition collection has a little bit of purple and pink glitters in it, which I think is perfect for the holidays, but it may not be the most user-friendly for the rest of the year. For the lipstick, I used a shade from last year's Couture face palette, and I went over that shade with this year's lipstick topper, which is very, very beautiful. So if you look at my swatches, I did both daytime and nighttime swatches for you guys because this is a very glittery formula, and I do want to show you guys the color of the glitters. So this is a almost white lipstick, but it has some pinkish purple glitters in the middle, and there's not much of a color to this lipstick, so I would recommend to use this as a topper as opposed to a standalone lipstick. And I do think it looked very, very nice over my plum lip color. What I will say is that I will recommend you to use this on top of a more transfer proof matte lipstick, because when you apply this as a topper, it will grab whatever color that's already on your lip, so you have to kind of be careful with that. And I was really surprised that this lipstick topper is very moisturizing. The texture is very similar to the Rouge Dior lip balm as opposed to the lipstick, so that's what I want to point out. And I don't think there's much perfume in it, so for those people that are sensitive to scents, this is quite nice as well. In terms of the Sequin lipstick, I'm going to do another review video just focusing on this product because the texture is a little bit different compared to last year's Sequin lipstick. It is more comfortable, but I think I personally prefer last year's formula, and I'm going to talk about why that's the case in more detail in another video. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you like this video and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out. In terms of the nail polish, I think this color is very similar to last year's collection, but I think this year's color is probably slightly more pink if you have to compare the two. And in terms of the glitter inside, it's very finely milled, so it's not the very chunky formula that Dior used to launch during their holiday seasons, which personally I actually prefer compared to this one. The benefit of this one is that it does go on very smoothly given that the glitters are very finely milled, but it doesn't give you that very kind of in your face glittery type of effect compared to what Dior used to launch. I applied this as a topper on top of my gel polish that I did recently, and I do want to do that so that you can see what it looks like on top of colored nail polish versus bare nail. I would personally use it just on its own. You know, I think that's going to look so pretty and elegant for the holiday season. In terms of final thoughts, I would say I personally enjoyed all the products that I tried on this year during the holiday season, and I especially enjoyed the eyeshadow palette that was launched, which I think had very thoughtful colors as well as formulas to help you create both daytime and nighttime looks. However, if you do have last year's Dior Backstage eyeshadow palette, I would say you may not need this new eyeshadow palette because there are some similar shades. And I do really recommend the lipstick topper because I think it's very beautiful and moisturizing, and also this lipstick is refillable, so when you're done with the color you can purchase regular refills and still be able to enjoy this beautiful gold packaging. The liquid highlighter, as mentioned, I wouldn't really recommend because it is very similar to the Permanent Collection shade Pearly, and this shade is cheaper compared to the limited edition color. And in terms of the Sequin lipsticks, I will talk about it in more detail in another video. I have quite a few thoughts to share, and I do want to compare this against last year's Sequin lipstick as well as the Chanel lipstick that looks very, very similar. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video.